Good morning. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is February 23rd, 2026. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to a new week. Uh, it is a little colder outside. I feel like a meteorologist because I keep giving you guys weather reporting. It's interesting that last week I was like, oh my God, it feels good. Okay, so today we're going to talk about U.S. federal government policy on Trump admin's tariffs versus the Supreme Court. Now, as you know, the mainstream media reported on it Friday or Saturday. That's when the Supreme Court came down with the ruling. I think that it was expected based on the fact that the last, I say, 15, 20 years, the Supreme Court reporters tell us the vibe of the Supreme Court. So I don't think anybody was surprised. So the decision was 6-3, and the Supreme Court ruled in Learning Resources Incorporated versus Trump. That's a company that filed to uh, get it into the court system and then eventually to the Supreme Court, that the president does not have the authority to impose tariffs under the International Emergency Economics Power Act, which is the IEEPA. Okay, so why is that important to you? That's a lot of an acronym, right? Okay, so the reason that I mention it is because tariff laws are very complicated and we have a lot of them. So when the president did that executive order, the authority that he was using was the International Emergency Economics Powers Act. So that's what the Supreme Court threw out. Why am I telling you that? Because, as you heard, within the next 24 hours, the president then said, well, I'm going to do the global one, and it's going to be 15%. So let's dive into it and see where we're at here. So the key rule and details, and this is important because the soundbite really didn't tell you. The president didn't totally lose. It was on the specific one that I just said. All right. The court held that the IEPPA's authority to regulate importation does not include the power to tax via tariffs. So, under what they just said, the tariff is considered a tax. So, Justice John Roberts said that emphasized that Article 1 of the Constitution reserves the taxing power exclusively for Congress. That explains it. Now, that was a simple way to explain it, and the soundbite was, well, Trump loses on tariffs. You have to dig in and give people more information that is more specific than that. So the decision invalidated the Liberation Day reciprocal tariffs and country specific tariffs targeting China, Mexico, and Canada that were based on the emergency declarations related to immigration and drugs. All right. So now, if we keep going with the specific, so what didn't it cover? So it wasn't a total loss. So you're going to hear it here first. The Supreme Court restricted the new broad tariffs under emergency powers. The administration continues to use and expand investigations under Section 232 allows for unlimited tariff rates and duration if the Secretary of Commerce finds imports threaten national security. That's what it says. Unfair trade practices allows for tariffs following the USTR investigation into unjustifiable foreign trade practices. Now, in a nutshell, you're going to be shaking your head and saying, well, why do I care? The reason what started this is some people think in the country that when we import things, there is an unfair tax that other countries are taking from us. Now, you have to look at the information and decide for yourself. And we're talking about China, Mexico, and Canada. And this tariff rule is been going on for at least 100 years. And if memory serves me right, in the 1800s, we were using tariffs on other countries to raise revenue. And at the time, believe it or not, we were doing that instead of taxing American citizens. And it helped the government raise a lot of money to buy land, to make all these beautiful buildings in Washington, D.C. So that's something that most people don't know. And why would you know it? Because they don't teach you those types of things, giving you the background that you need. Okay, so the immediate impact and response. Tariff cessation. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol began deactivating the IEEPA related tariff codes on February 24th. That's specifically what I've been talking about. So, after the ruling, President Trump signed a new proclamation to impose a 10% global tariff, later increased to 15% because that's what the law says. And he used Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. So that happened over the weekend. And there's a finite days, I think it's 150 days, and then Congress would have to weigh in because the Supreme Court has set in motion that a tariff is a tax. And taxation can only be done by the legislative branch, which is Congress. And they're not going to back off of that. Unaffected tariffs, steel and aluminum fall under that one, and that's more directed at Japan. It's directed at China and one or two other countries. Middle East didn't do anything to them at all. All right. So I told you what the Emergency Economic Powers Act is, so that's what they hit. All right. So, a lot of these acts in general are talking about national security and foreign policy blend, saying that other countries can't politically use tariffs against us. And so that's why Congress in the late 70s, when Congress actually used to do legislation that benefited the country, passed all of these. So that is what's happening with that. So the ruling also was implemented by the Trump administration during the second term. And the reasoning again was that other countries are imposing these unfair tariffs and they're getting billions of dollars from us to benefit their countries. And so the Trump administration was just saying that they were trying to make it a fair trade. And I told you previously that most of these agreements were done by Congress and previous presidents. And one of the presidents was President Bill Clinton. And the biggest one that we had seen back then, and this is in the 90s, it was the North American Free Trade Agreement, which President Trump modified in his first term. So you have to decide, because this issue can be boring from the perspective of its numbers and what's coming into the country, and then they slap on these tariffs, and then what do businesses do when they're trying to bring the product to market? Do they mark it up, etc.? And that's why it's been tense between us and Canada. So the Supreme Court has ruled on this one. We have the 15% one globally for 150 days. Let me know what you think. And based on the facts and details that I've given you, what is your opinion of tariffs going forward? This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Please subscribe and have a great day.